December 1944, a frozen supply point near Bastogne, Belgium. Men stand in shivering lines. The wind cuts through wool coats like a knife. It is the height of the Battle of the Bulge. Red Cross trucks arrive at the depot. They carry small boxes of hope, chocolate bars, fresh cigarettes. These are the Christmas packages every soldier is praying for. But for the black engineers digging tank traps in the sub-zero mud, the crates never arrive. Sergeant Raymond Tupper tells them the shipment vanished. He claims they were diverted. He is lying. The boxes are hidden behind a locked door in his private storage. He is selling a soldier's comfort for a black market profit. He believes no one will look for crates meant for black troops. He is wrong. General George S. Patton is on his way. The sergeant is about to receive a delivery he will never forget. This is the story of how a corrupt distribution sergeant stole the only warmth the battalion of black engineers had left, and the devastating response General Patton delivered when he found the stolen crates. Before we continue, make sure you subscribe. We tell the World War II stories that show what happened when a man's color mattered more than his courage. Corporal William Ashe was 21 years old. He came from the south side of Chicago, Illinois. He served in an engineer battalion assigned to the harshest sectors of the line. Before the war, he was a student with dreams of becoming an architect. Now, he was a man with a shovel and a frozen rifle. For 14 days, Ashe had lived in a slit trench outside Bastogne. The mud had turned into iron. The wind ripped through his thin gloves. His fingers were cracked and bleeding from hauling heavy timber for roadblocks to stop German panzers. He had written a letter to his mother on a scrap of damp paper. He told her that maybe the army would give them a real Christmas this year. He hoped for a taste of home. He hoped for a single bar of Hershey's chocolate or a dry pair of wool socks. He stood in the falling snow and watched white infantry units haul away heavy crates of Red Cross supplies, while his own hands remained empty and numb. Sergeant First Class Raymond Tupper was 32. He was a career logistics man from Springfield, Illinois. Tupper did not believe in the mission. He believed in the dollar. He viewed the black engineers as a lower class of labor, not as fellow soldiers. To him, their comfort was a wasted resource. While Ashe froze in a hole, Tupper sat in a warm farmhouse with a roaring wood stove. His boots were polished to a mirror shine. His uniform was pressed and smelled of expensive French tobacco. He kept a small leather ledger hidden in his breast pocket. It recorded $3,000 in illegal sales to local black marketeers in just 3 months. He had hidden 200 Christmas packages intended for the engineers behind a false wall in the supply depot. When asked where the shipment was, he simply shrugged. He told the officers the truck had been shelled on the road from Paris. He spent his Christmas Eve counting Belgian francs while the men he was ordered to supply began to freeze. The Ardennes was a graveyard of steel and ice. December 1944 saw the German army launch its final, desperate gamble through the dense forests of Belgium. It was the Battle of the Bulge. The Allied lines were stretched thin. Communication was fractured. Roads were clogged with retreating units and advancing reinforcements. In the middle of this chaos, logistics became a weapon of survival. If a truck did not arrive, men died. If the fuel ran out, the tanks became iron coffins. The American military was a machine of 2 gears. One was white, one was black. Segregation was the law of the land and the rule of the camp. Black battalions were often relegated to the back of the line for everything: new boots, clean blankets, hot food. Many white officers viewed these discrepancies as a regrettable side effect of war. They called it unavoidable friction. They looked at the empty hands of black soldiers and blamed the German artillery or the clogged snowy passes. It was easier to ignore a theft than to confront a racial hierarchy. This systemic blindness created a vacuum. Men like Tupper filled it. They knew that a missing shipment of luxuries for a black unit would not trigger an investigation. The paperwork was easy to forge. The witnesses had no voice. Most commanders were too busy looking at maps of the front line to worry about a few hundred boxes of chocolate and tobacco at a rear echelon supply point. They saw the big picture. They missed the rot growing in their own warehouses. The rot had reached its limit at the depot near Bastogne. Captain David Miller walked into the heated office at the supply depot. He was 28, from Boston, and worked for the Criminal Investigation Division. He shook the wet snow from his coat and looked at Sergeant Raymond Tupper. "Sergeant, I am looking for the manifest for the Red Cross shipment that arrived on the 20th, Miller said. Tupper did not look up from his coffee. Lost in the shelling near Houffalize, sir, he said. The convoy commander says he delivered 10 crates to this depot, Miller said. The commander is mistaken, Tupper said. He signed a receipt at the gate, Miller said. Paperwork gets messy in a retreat, Tupper said. I have been through your distribution logs, Tupper, Miller said. Every white battalion in the sector received their holiday allotment. That is correct, Tupper said. The 332nd Engineer Battalion received nothing, Miller said. Tupper leaned back in his chair. A tragedy of war, he said. Miller stepped closer to the desk. They are 5 miles away digging tank traps in the frozen mud, he said. They are doing their jobs, Tupper said. Where are their packages? Miller asked. I told you, they never made it, Tupper said. Miller pulled a small, black ledger from under a stack of empty crates near the door. This says you sold 50 cartons of Lucky Strike cigarettes to a civilian in Namur yesterday, he said. Tupper's face went pale, then it went red. Those were personal stock, he said. 200 boxes of personal stock? Miller asked. Look, Captain, you are making a fuss over nothing, Tupper said. I am making a fuss over theft from the Red Cross, Miller said. Those boys out there do not know the difference between a Hershey bar and a piece of coal, Tupper said. They are American soldiers, Miller said. They are laborers, Tupper snapped. They do not need chocolate and fine tobacco. I am putting those supplies where they actually have value. You are selling them on the black market, Miller said. I am making sure they do not go to waste on people who should not have them in the first place, Tupper said. The regulations are clear on distribution, Miller said. The regulations were not written for the Ardennes, Tupper said. You are relieved of duty, Sergeant, Miller said. You cannot relieve me for looking out for the Army's interests, Tupper said. Miller did not argue. He walked to the field phone on the wall. He called the headquarters of the Third Army. The report reached Patton within the hour. Patton's jeep skidded to a halt in the slush outside the warehouse. He stepped out before the engine died. 4 stars gleamed on his helmet. 2 ivory-handled revolvers hung from his belt. He did not slam the door. He walked into the depot with a measured, heavy stride. The room went silent. Every man snapped to attention. The air seemed to drop 10 degrees. Patton did not raise his voice. He looked only at Sergeant Tupper. Sergeant, do you know who I am? Patton asked. Yes, General. General Patton, sir. Where are the 200 Christmas packages for the 332nd Engineers? There was a misunderstanding with the manifest, sir. The manifest is clear. The captain says you have them in the back. Is that true? I was holding them for safekeeping, sir. Safekeeping or sale, Sergeant? I didn't think they were a priority for those troops, sir. Patton stepped within inches of Tupper's face. He spoke in a low, surgical whistle. You believe you are a judge of priority. You think your ledger is more important than an army order. You decided that the men digging my defenses do not deserve the same comforts as the men who stand behind them. The 332nd is 5 miles forward. They have been in the snow for 14 days without a fire. They are building the obstacles that will keep German Tiger tanks from crushing the farmhouse where you sleep. They have earned their chocolate with their blood. Corporal Ash is out there now. He is 21. He is from Chicago. He is working until his hands bleed because I told him to. He does not have a warm stove. He does not have a ledger. He has a shovel and a hope that his country remembers him. You took that hope. You stole from the men who are protecting your life. You are not a soldier. You are a thief in a uniform. You are a parasite, feeding on the courage of better men. Now you will fix it. You have 2 options. You will load every one of those 200 boxes into a jeep. You will drive to the front. You will walk to every foxhole. You will hand-deliver every package to every man in that battalion. You will do it on foot. You will do it in the snow. The alternative is a court-martial for theft and desertion of duty during active combat. I will see you stripped of your rank and sent to a labor camp before sunset. Pick one. Tupper's hands shook. The ledger fell to the floor. He looked at the floor. He whispered that he would deliver the boxes. Patton turned and walked out. The delivery began at dusk. 2 military police officers stood by with rifles, watching as Tupper loaded the 200 crates onto a flatbed trailer. Then the order came. He was not to ride. He was to walk. Tupper trudged into the Belgian night, the wind howling through the trees like a wounded animal. Each box weighed 30 pounds. To Tupper, they felt like lead. He walked through 3 miles of knee-deep drifts to reach the first line of frozen trenches. His polished boots were ruined in minutes. His hands, once soft from paperwork, turned blue and cracked. Corporal Ash and the men of the 332nd watched in silence as the sergeant stumbled toward them. There was no cheering. There was only the sound of Tupper's ragged breathing and the heavy thud of the boxes hitting the frozen earth. One by one, he handed them out. "Merry Christmas," he was forced to say, his voice thin and trembling. The engineers saw a man who had tried to sell their dignity forced to carry it back to them on his back. By the time the last box was delivered, Tupper collapsed in the slush. He wasn't allowed to rest. The MPs hauled him up and marched him straight to a waiting CID vehicle. The debt was paid in sweat and ice. Corporal William Ash returned to Chicago in 1946. He traded his shovel for a drafting table and realized his dream of becoming an architect. He designed buildings that stood strong against the Illinois wind, much like the timber roadblocks he once built in the Ardennes. He lived a long, quiet life and passed away in 2004. He rarely spoke of the battle, but his children found a single, faded Red Cross chocolate wrapper in a small wooden box in his attic. It was smoothed out and kept as a reminder of the night justice arrived in the snow. Raymond Tupper did not return to his comfortable life in Springfield. He was court-martialed for theft of Red Cross supplies and black market racketeering. He served 8 years in the military prison at Fort Leavenworth before being dishonorably discharged. He spent the rest of his life working as a night watchman in a warehouse in Peoria. He remained a bitter man, blaming the military bureaucracy for his downfall until his death in 1978. He never understood that it was not the army that broke him, but his own choice to value profit over the men he was sworn to serve. General Patton never spoke of the delivery in his public memoirs. He kept the CID report on Tupper in a locked file in his desk until the end of the war. He mentioned the incident only once in a private letter to his wife. He wrote that a leader's duty is to ensure the smallest man in the greatest cold is never forgotten by his country. "A thief in the rear is a more dangerous enemy than a Panzer in the front," he wrote. Some historians argue that Patton's choice to use public humiliation was a breach of military protocol. They suggest he ignored the standard legal process in favor of a dramatic display that risked the chain of command. Others argue that the brutal reality of the Ardennes called for immediate and visible justice. They claim that waiting for a formal trial would have shattered the morale of the black soldiers, who had been betrayed by their own supply line. What is certain is that the 200 packages were delivered to the freezing engineers, and the 332nd Battalion continued to hold the line throughout the German offensive. If you had been in Patton's position, would you have forced the sergeant to walk that delivery through the sub-zero cold, or would you have simply let the military police handle the arrest? Let us know in the comments. And if you want more stories about when a man's color mattered more than his courage, make sure to subscribe.